Hello everybody and welcome back to the channel. I am currently between games for my third recording slot on my daily uploads. So I figured I'd hop in for giving another shot at some of the React/conversation content. Obviously, there's massive stuff going on YouTube right now regarding Mr. Beast, so that's the obvious candidate for something interesting to talk about for one of these videos. Before we hop into that, though, I'd like to encourage you to help out the channel by helping us reach our 10,000 subscriber milestone. You actually have to press the button for the number to go up, so be sure to do that before you leave. Like the video to help it spread out to others so that they have a chance to subscribe as well. And if React content isn't your cup of tea, the channel has 1,500 plus other videos, nice and neatly organized into convenient playlists for your real pleasure. So be sure to head over to the channel, check out the other videos we have, and see if anything catches your fancy. So if you unless you've been hiding under a rock for the last however minute, like week or two, you know that there's crazy stuff going on with one of the YouTube's most popular content creators, Mr. Beast. A lot of bad things are starting to surface around him. Obviously, we don't have. I haven't done enough research to know 100% of what's going on and how accurate any of it is. All we can go on is just what we hear about through the grapevine. So we're going to watch this video here, hear about some things happening, and kind of talk about my perspective on what I think about this kind of stuff. So let's see what's going on.
Well, guys, I never thought I was actually going to say this, but it turns out Mr. Beast, aka Jimmy Donaldson, is a war criminal. He has so casually inflicted psychological torture on an ex-employee that he literally breaks down crying while trying to recount details. Forget about Ava Chris Tyson. This is not even related anymore. This is about Jimmy as a person and how terrible he is. Because Ava truly was the tip of the iceberg. One of the highest ranking members of Mr. Beast YouTube LLC for a long time was a known criminal on the sex offender registry. His criminal record states that the person he did these things to was extremely young. We're talking.
So I want to start this out by talking about a truism that has filtered throughout humanity as a whole from the beginning of time. We have a saying, power corrupts, and absolute power corrupts absolutely. And a lot of times we hear things like that and we go, oh, yeah, whatever. And we don't really internalize how true sayings like that are. We have these sayings, we have these proverbs, we have these whatever term you want to use for it because they're true. Because most of the time it actually holds water when you look back on the past and see things like this. You start getting a lot of money, you start getting a lot of power, you start getting a lot of control, and you start thinking, it changes the way you think. It changes the way you approach things. It changes the way you deal with people. And it's one of those things where it's a slow corruption over time. And, you know, most people who end up in situations like what we're seeing Mr. Beast is turning out to be, at least, you know, allegedly what we're hearing about online, I almost guarantee that when he first started all of this stuff, he probably, he almost certainly wasn't like this from the start. There's something that happens to you slowly and insidiously over time as you start to gain lots and lots of money, and then that money gives you access to power, and then that power gives you a sense of you can do whatever you want. And once you start having the chains of obligation and responsibility and all those things start to, you know, you start breaking free of those things, you start seeing other people as something other than what you started out seeing them as. And that's just kind of the way that it works. And there's a reason why we have systems of balance in a lot of parts of the world, because we understand that if you give one person too much control and money and power over something, it almost always goes bad. No matter how good the person started out being, power has this way of corrupting you in a way that you don't recognize until it's too late. So I want to start out by saying that there's a lot of people who are talking about how Mr. Beast always had these dead eyes and all this other stuff. You know, you can't judge somebody by what they look like. Realistically, when he first started out, he probably wasn't a bad dude. And if he is a bad dude now, it was probably a slow transformation over this meteoric rise in success that he's had as he started his channel and grew into as big as he is now. So keep that in mind when you're starting this, that just because he's bad now doesn't mean he was bad back then. And the content that he made back then probably did come from a genuine place, and now he's just kind of been twisted by the situation that he's been in. That doesn't absolve him of responsibility from who he is and what he's doing now, if all of these things are true. Don't get me wrong. I'm not giving him a pass. I'm just saying that it can happen to anybody, and it almost always happens when people get this kind of fame and success and a sense of being free of consequence.
Under 13 years old, and he was only fired recently with allegations that Mr. Beast YouTube LLC is trying to clear his name from public record. Because of course, they don't want this to bite them in the ass. Things are getting extremely serious. Let's talk about it. After uploading the first video, which was I Worked for Mr. Beast, He's a Fraud, the much anticipated sequel has finally come out, titled I Worked for Mr. Beast, He's a Sociopath. In it, we see Jake Weddle being interviewed, a stand-up comedian who used to work at Mr. Beast YouTube LLC during 2019 and 2020.
So before we get into the details of that, you gotta be careful with the word sociopath. Sociopath is a psychological, actual condition that people have that makes them... There's a definition for it, but all you really need to take away from it is that you have no sense of empathy for other people, which causes you to do things in a way that is completely self-serving and takes no account of what your actions are doing to anybody else. Could he be a sociopath? Like I said, it's certainly possible. It's possible that he has been this way ever since the beginning, and he's just done whatever he had to do to get where he is now. Do I think that's likely? I don't know. I don't know. I haven't watched it. I don't follow his content. I'm not a subscriber to his channel. Never have been. I've never been interested in any of the content that he does. I don't really know anything about him. So anything I say here comes from an outsider's perspective. But when you use the word sociopath, that's an actual psychological medical condition that has to be diagnosed. And so you look at him now, and maybe he seems like a sociopath because he's been corrupted by power to the point that he's delved into that territory. But whether he actually is or not, who knows?
As a writer and someone who appeared in the video,
your actions kind of matter. So if he's acting like a sociopath, he might as well be one.
With a new one. As you can see, he's right here, and he was one of the people who got his car destroyed, and it was meant to be a surprise. Like, oh, they're about to come out, they're going to see this huge rock on the car, they're going to think it's a meteor. He knew about it, by the way. This is when things would start to go from real videos to more staged and fake videos. According to him, of course. Now what happens next is that he notices that he's barely making any money compared to how much the videos are generating. And he talks about the political nature of Mr. Beast YouTube LLC, how if you were on Jimmy's good side and you praised him and you stroked his ego, he'd appear in videos more and he would give you random bonuses. But when you were on the bad side, and Jake Weddle was on the bad side, you would get nothing. He would be in videos all the time, but he would then get edited out of the videos most of the time. He tells this to another writer that he really likes on the team, like, hey, you know, maybe we could negotiate.
So I want to have sympathy for this part. When I jump into these things, I'm tackling each of these issues individually, because a lot of times people try to conglomerate things together to try to build this overall image that's bad. And I'm sure it's bad. Don't get me wrong. I'm not trying to say that it's not bad, but in this, I'm tackling these things individually from an individual. I am a compartmentalized kind of person, and so this particular issue, I'm talking about this one specific issue, regardless of the other things that are going on. If you're going to work for somebody, you're going to work for them under their system and the way that they do things. And if you don't like it, you quit and you leave. Nobody's forcing you to be there. Nobody's holding a gun to your head forcing you to be there. We don't live in that unless you live in like China or something, or I don't even know. Unless you live in one of those countries where they force you to do things, you're not forced to be there. You can quit and go find something else to do. And if the people you're working for are making you miserable, you quit your job or you look for something else and you transfer over into that. So when I hear people whine and complain about how they're doing this and they're not getting what they think they deserve, well, that's your fault. You need to quit, or you either need to quit or you need to start looking for something else and find another place to be. If you're too much of a yes person and you're so unable to decide for yourself what you want out of your life that you can't tear yourself away from a situation that is just completely destroying you, I'm sorry, I have a hard time having sympathy for you. Man up, get out of the situation and figure out your life. Don't whine about it, don't cry about it, don't be a little baby about it. Figure it out. Like, we complain about it all you want, but do something about it. Nobody wants to hear your whiny story about how the person that your boss is treating you bad. You think you're the only person who has had a boss that treats them like crap, who uses them to get what they want and doesn't give anything in return? The vast majority of people out there working in jobs are in that situation, so it's not special. Again, this is me focusing on this one specific issue. I'm not defending Mr. Beast in the slightest. I'm just saying, dude, grow up.
Cheat a little bit, we can let them know about how we feel, etc., etc. The other writer was reluctant, but Jake convinced him. They both go and try to negotiate, or at least argue their case, and they immediately just are told, well, cool. The next day they show up, they're fired. Of course, Jake breaks down crying here because he didn't want the other writer to lose his job because he loved his job. But that was the nature of the workplace known as Mr. Beast YouTube LLC. He'd start working, and he's there perfectly, in 2019 it's perfectly within, and was fired in
I disagree with the idea that anyone else gets to come in and tell you how to run your business. You get in your business how you run your business, as long as you're not actively hurting anybody. If you want to run your business in a way that makes people stressed out and makes it hard to be there, and people are behaving in a way that you don't like and you don't want them to work for you anymore, you fire them. I have no problem with that. I don't think anybody should have a problem with that. If you don't want to, if you don't want to work for them, you don't have to. And if you don't want somebody working for you, you shouldn't have to have them work for you. Your business is your business. You run your business how you want to run your business. And if you're going to do things that anger your employer, well, then you run the risk of getting fired. And that's the way that works. And to be perfectly honest with you, this guy should have thought about, or this guy doesn't have to worry about. Let me make sure I'm saying things the way I want to say them. The responsibility of the other writer is not on this guy. The other writer just made the decision to do what the other writer did, and he took the consequences along with this guy, and they both are responsible for their own thing. So, again, grow up. You're not responsible for anybody but yourself. And if somebody else decides to come along for the ride with you, that's their problem, not yours. This guy is overly emotional and needs to grow up a little bit. Again, I'm not defending Mr. Beast. Let me make that very clear. If Mr. Beast is an asshole, he's an asshole. But in this particular situation, business is business, and you make the decisions that you make, and you live with the consequences of the decisions that you choose.
He was actually very happy to be fired. He mentions how different Jimmy was off camera, how he had only one thing on his mind, to be the biggest YouTuber, and has no sense of any human empathy. When he would be giving people life-changing amounts of money, he'd be hoping that they cry, being like, yes, please cry. It will be so good if you cry. It'll be so good for the video. Almost like nothing he was doing was real. Jake moves on from this, and by 2021...
Okay, and I definitely want to make sure I stop and address this. I've watched, I think, a couple of videos where Mr. Beast has made it very clear that from the very beginning, he's been obsessive about becoming the biggest YouTuber possible. Like, that is his goal. That is his 100% stated goal. He has never deviated from that. He's always made it very clear that he wants to be the biggest YouTuber. Now, if he's doing terrible things to get there, he needs to be punished for that, and there needs to be consequences for that. But to make it clear that off camera he's a different person, well, yeah, of course he is, because he's come out and said that he wants to be the biggest YouTuber. That's his overarching goal, and he's been very upfront about that. All the rest of this stuff, that doesn't excuse all the rest of this stuff, but people try to bring up a bunch of different things to paint a picture of a person, and they include things that don't really apply. And in this particular case, that he's a different person off camera, everybody's a different person off camera. I'm a different person off camera. Any other content creator is a different person off camera, because you're in a performance mode, and you're trying to get things done, and you're trying to produce a product that people are consuming. I don't behave the same way. I behave pretty close to who I am off camera, but I don't yell and scream and act like a jackass the way I do when I'm in my personal time and something's not going right, and I lose my temper and I start yelling and screaming and ruining my voice because I'm angry about something. I don't do that on camera. Most people don't. There is an online persona and an offline persona. Every person who produces anything in public has something like that. So again, this is individually compartmentalized. This is an argument as far as I'm concerned. Not defending Mr. Beast. The other things that they're going to take out of this are pretty fucked up, so I'm not defending him. I'm just saying compartmentalize each part of it. You need to remove the stuff that doesn't matter and really focus on the stuff that does.
He had moved to New York to work on his stand-up comedy career. He gets a phone call from his ex-employer, Mr. Beast YouTube LLC. in which he's pitched an idea for a video he'd be starring in. According to him, the pitch made it seem like it was going to be paradise. It was going to be very simple. You're just going to sit in this room, chilling, on vacation. You have an ice cream machine, you have a bed all to yourself, a bathroom, everything you need, really. All you have to do is survive in this room for 100 days, and even better, every single day you sit there, you get $10,000. Only the last 5 days are going to be hard, you're going to be tortured a little bit, but otherwise, easy. And to Jake, this meant two life-changing things. First off, he was going to be fully starring in a video, right? He's usually always edited out, and the editors told him it's because of his strong personality. So that's awesome. He gets to actually flex his comedic bones.
Okay, I have to say, he's edited out because of his strong personality. You don't edit out strong personalities in videos. The strong personalities are the ones that you want to focus on because they're the most interesting to watch. So, what?
And second, $10,000 a day. He comes from a very
I wish I could get $10,000 a day.
So this is a very life-changing amount of money. He said yes, and
yeah, that is a life-changing amount of money
immediately. Now, what many people don't know is that this video wasn't released, and it was a testing ground for the video that did release starring Jimmy called I Survived 50 Hours in a Maximum Security Prison. Actually, what's even more interesting and wasn't mentioned as far as I recall in the video from DocPack was that the same set, the same exact room where they put Jake was used in the video $10,000 every day you survive prison. Jake has given us pictures, and as you can see, it's the same exact set. And here's Jake himself. Jake says that while it may look cute on video, the facility had a lot of problems. The hot tub had no filtration system, so it would smell after 3 days. The ice cream machine's dairy was disgusting. Very strong, so it would also be very smelly. This room
I've heard some, I have to pause every once in a while so I can make sure that that I can make sure it's sufficiently transformed so that YouTube doesn't have a problem with it being like that. So if I step in every so often, that's why. I actually have heard some of this in other videos. This specific situation where he went in and the facility kind of sucked, and again, while that may be the case, he's a free person and he has the ability to say, hey, I'm done and I don't want to be here anymore. So when you put yourself in a situation like that, being offered a lot of money, and you're willing to put up with those things in exchange for the money, I don't really have a lot of sympathy for you because you chose to be there, you're choosing to continue to be there, and unless they have you chained up and you're not allowed to leave, then anything that happens to you while you're there is your problem. I don't agree with this idea, this modern idea that nobody is responsible for their own decisions and their own actions. You do something and you're responsible for it doesn't matter what anyone else does. If you're unable to discern what makes sense to do and what doesn't make sense to do, then sorry, you should pay more.
A septic tank. That was its plumbing system, so that also was smelly. Overall, it wasn't a very nice room to be in.
Too bad.
And he had just agreed to a challenge of staying here for 100 days in solitary with
you can
no
walk away at any
contact.
point.
He didn't
this is a non-argument to me, because at any point he can walk out. He's being greedy, he wants the money, and he's doing what he has to do to try to get to doing what he thinks he needs to do to get the money. Does he actually get any money out of this? I don't know. We'll find out here in a minute. But it's his choice to be there. Nobody's holding a gun to his head. Nobody's forcing him to be there. He's agreeing to be there. So again, compartmentalizing this individual thing, does all of this build a case showing Mr. Beast as an asshole? Sure. But at the same time, these people all this person needs to take responsibility for all of the things that they did to put themselves in the situations that they were in. And this is yet another example of he's making choices that aren't good for him and then complaining about another person who put him in that position. You put yourself here by agreeing to do what this person, what the guy asked you to do. This is your fault, and I'm sorry. I don't have any sympathy for people who make decisions that put them in bad places and then want to whine about it when it's done.
Last more than 10 days. You have to understand, Jake is genuinely a victim. This isn't some sob story. He would literally start trembling and crying whenever he would recount what happened in that room. He was cut off from human contact, but the worst part was that they would not turn off the fluorescent lights. And he had no source of sunlight, no windows. He could not sleep. He still suffers of insomnia today. And the symptoms started during this challenge. Imagine being in a room, right? A smelly ass, small, stupid room, and you have no sense of time passing. You have no idea how long it's been, the sunlight, the moon, nothing, zero. This is what solitary is. It's meant to be torture. He wouldn't be able to fall asleep,
and he
was
agreed
expected
to
do daily challenges almost. Because
he
guess
agreed
what?
to it.
The cameras were rolling 24/7. He had to be entertaining. He had to make jokes. He had to look at the camera and say things. You'd know what I'm talking about if you watched a Mr. Beast video before. He of course complained about this, right? It's hard not to complain when you can't sleep. It's one of the worst things on the planet, and staff wouldn't budge. He'd get visited by editors sometimes and they'd joke around saying, wow man, everything okay? This footage looks horrid. It seems like you're going through a really rough time. Yeah, no shit. The guy can't sleep. He was able to briefly speak to one of his friends on set, telling him about the fact that they can't turn off the...
Okay, so anybody who knows anything about business knows that I'm talking about this no doesn't mean no thing that they were trying to show on the screen. They're trying to paint that like that's a terrible attitude, but as long as you're not, like, the example on the screen made it very clear that you're not just going to do stuff if they explicitly say no. But if you can find somebody who will tell you yes, then go do that. That's just standard. That's sales. That's standard. Don't take no for an answer. I'm going to get the sale closed. I'm going to do what I got to do. You may not like that attitude, but there's nothing different. There's nothing different from what you saw on screen there versus what a salesperson tries to do, who's a real go-getter and is really trying to get stuff done. I don't like that. I don't want anybody doing it to me, and I'll tell somebody to leave me the hell alone if they're trying to be like that. But there's nothing inherently wrong with doing everything you can to try to accomplish the mission, whatever mission it is that you're trying to accomplish, as long as you're not hurting anybody while you do it. So the policy that I saw there, at least as far as I could read it, trying to listen to him talk and read the text at the same time, there wasn't anything really there that stood out to me as terrible. Is it good? No, I don't like it. I don't think most people like it. But successful people do things that most people don't like, and that's just kind of the way that it works. So again, another compartmentalized thing where I'm saying this individual thing by itself isn't bad. Overall, does it paint a better picture? Probably, but you got to start wiping away these things that are non-issues.
The lights, and his friend jokingly said, well, buddy, that's a war crime. We can't even do this to terrorists. That's sleep deprivation. And the worst part is, he's right. So at this point, Jake's already thinking, you know what?
Again, the way that these guys, I don't want to talk about the guy who's doing the channel. I mean, I think he's drinking the Kool-Aid a little bit. And again, I know it sounds like I'm defending Mr. Beast. They're going to get to some parts where I'm going to say, no, this is completely effed up, because I've already heard some of these things, and I know they're going to talk about it. At least I hope they're going to talk about it. But a lot of the stuff I'm seeing in this particular video, I'm just like, you could have walked away at any moment, man. Nobody was forcing you to be there. You chose to be there. So whatever happened to you, this is your fault. The whole... this is human rights violations. It's only a human rights violation if you're doing it against somebody's will. If this person is choosing to be there as part of a challenge that involves some kind of compensation, why am I supposed to feel bad about that? Why am I supposed to feel bad for this person because they allowed themselves to be subjected to this? And like if they wouldn't let him leave, they said, no, you can't leave. No, you can't leave. No, you're staying here the whole time. That's a different thing. But if he was able to leave at any point, then I'm sorry, I don't have any sympathy for you. You chose to be there. No matter how bad the situation was, you chose it. You chose to be there because you wanted to get something, and that's just the way that it is. I'm sorry. I have no sympathy. So far, I have no sympathy of anything that's been said so far.
For 30 days, let alone for 10. I need to get out immediately. Then Jimmy shows up, asks, hey, why is he sleeping? And staff says, oh yeah, he's having a hard time sleeping. And Jimmy says, well, wake him up. He pulls 2 briefcases and says, hey, we have 2 challenges today. You want to find out what they are? And Jake at this point is sleep deprived. He's like, oh, hey, what are the challenges? Jimmy says, well, the first one is a Rubik's Cube. Jake says, there's no way I can do this. I'm dyslexic. It's going to be very embarrassing. I can't do it. Jimmy cuts the persona completely and looks at him and says, come on, just do it. For the challenge, for the video. Come on. Jake manages to avoid it, but then the second challenge was running a marathon on a treadmill. And by that point, Jake knew he couldn't just say no. He was going to be forced to do it, so he did it. No practice beforehand, by the way.
Okay, I need some context here. I need to know, what's forced to do it mean? Does it mean that he can't leave? Are they physically preventing him from leaving the facility? Or is it just, I don't like the consequences of what's going to happen if I leave, so I'm going to do this because I feel like I have to? If it's the second one, I don't care. You're choosing to be there. You're choosing to be there. Is there a psychological manipulation going on there? Sure. Is there games being played to try to convince him to stay? Sure. Is Mr. Beast a piece of shit for behaving the way that he's behaving as portrayed in this video? Absolutely. But at the end of the day, unless they're physically preventing you from leaving, every minute you stay there is your own fault. Again, I don't want to defend Mr. Beast. All the other things I've heard so far in other videos are some pretty terrible crap, and if they're true, then he needs to like go to jail or something. But this video right here is just, it sounds like somebody who doesn't want to take accountability for their own decisions. That's all I've heard so far. And, you know, maybe I'm an asshole for thinking that, but that's what this sounds like. Nobody forced you to be there. You're choosing to be there. And I don't know, man.
Right, no preparation.
I don't know.
He
I can't
just
be.
woken up and he is sleep deprived. And according to him, he ended up running from 12 to 3 a.m. I don't know whether it was 12 p.m. or 12 a.m., but regardless, 3 or 9 hours, regardless, right? You're making someone sleep deprived and
marathon takes about 3 hours. It's got to be 12 to 3
a.m.
a.m.
war crime for sure. He was allowed to take breaks, but by the end,
you got to stop using the word war crime. First and foremost, we're not in a war. Second, this guy is voluntarily choosing to do these things, so there's no crime being committed here. The guy is voluntarily doing these things in exchange for the hope of money. Now, if it was all a fraud, you could charge him with fraud, but it's not a war crime. He's choosing to do these things. Stop using the word war crime. It's not a war crime.
End of it, his feet.
I'm sorry, I'm getting irritated, but this is ridiculous.
I don't even want to know what they actually looked like, but it was probably horrifying. They got the on-site psychologist to go talk to him, and the psychologist was like, yeah, dude, it's over. He can't do no more. All of a sudden, everyone was concerned. And he laughs about this. He says, well, guess what? That night, they decided to turn off the lights. The next day, all the staff is there to comfort him, all his friends. You know, he does specify that a lot of them were talking, voicing the fact that this isn't fair. This shouldn't even be happening, that they're treating him very badly. But of course, you know, they weren't the decision makers. Jimmy apparently sat there in front of him like an evil villain and said, like, some of the most cold things. Like, hey, you know, it was horrible, but at least you get to keep the money.
He said, Jimmy said, can you say to the camera how thankful you are that now you can pay back your student loans? You know how hard it was to do a take of that? Then pretend to make it genuine? I don't want to have student loans. I don't want to be in a cage. But Jimmy's the guy with the money, and if you do what he says, he'll do what you want. You want your student loans paid off? You'll be in this cage.
He got out of it.
I know I'm an asshole. I know I'm being an asshole right now. But I have no patience for appeals to emotion to try to win an argument. I have no, like... everything that this video is focusing on is how Mr. Beast made this guy feel, right? And were there illegal things going on? Maybe. But nothing in this video has made it very clear that this is what happened, this is what was illegal about it, and, you know, Mr. Beast needs to have some consequences that happens to him because of it. Human rights are only violated if you're doing it against the person's will. You see what I mean? Like, I understand, like, if they forced him, if they grabbed him and locked him in a room and told him he couldn't leave and he was forced to be there and he didn't have the option to walk away and all of that, then human rights are being violated, because now your right to choose what you want for yourself and have the kind of life that you want to have is being violated. This does not qualify. He's choosing to be there. He's choosing to stay in those in those circumstances. He's choosing to put up with this employer who constantly makes him, you know, who constantly does these things to him. This is his choice to be there. There's no war crimes. There's no violation of human rights. There's none of that. The guy chose to put himself in this situation, and he I'm sorry. I disagree with the emotional appeal to my sensibilities. It's not. In this particular case, there's plenty of other things that you can go after Mr. Beast for. Oops, sorry. Press the button. Oops. What did I do? Oh, I think we're right here. There's plenty of other things you can go after Mr. Beast for in the things that are happening right now. But this particular one, like, dude, you should have just walked away then. I don't have any sympathy for you. You had the option to walk away, and you got greedy, and you didn't. So, You know, I understand it's a lot of money. I understand it's a life-changing amount of money. I'm not saying he's wrong for wanting the money. I know there's going to be people in the comments who say, people who are desperate and struggling, well, you know what? I'm completely flat broke, and I'm not out there doing crazy-ass shit to try to pay my bills. All right? So I understand, you know, when you're desperate for money and you need something, you do things you wouldn't normally do. But again, that's still your choice to do it. And we still punish criminals for doing bad things because they were desperate. Well, he still needs to take accountability for his actions because even though he was desperate, okay? So I know I'm being an asshole right now. I don't like being an asshole, but, you know, the reality of this situation is your emotions don't matter. The choices you make matter, and he put himself here. So I have a hard time feeling sympathy about it.
In taxes. So in reality, he got $56,000. Some people in the comments of DocPack's video argued that his symptoms showed that he has PTSD from this. Maybe. All I know is that he couldn't stop crying thinking about it, and that to me is enough. This is literal psychological torture mixed in with war crimes. Jimmy has a lot to answer for. And now, other than Ava Chris Tyson being an absolute disgusting weirdo, we now know that someone who used to work there as a high-ranking manager was on the sex offender registry. The dude
now
even appeared in videos and
story.
For some reason, right? some reason chose to put on a mask. I wonder why he's trying to hide his identity. His charge is from the state of Delaware. The victim's age is from 1 to 11 years old. That is ridiculously young. And his charge is 4th degree.
Now, if you want to go after Mr. Beast for something, this is definitely on the list of things that you absolutely should go after him for, because, you know, one of the questions I don't know. I don't necessarily know that employers are responsible for making sure they know the criminal history of the people that are working for them. But some other things that I've heard online made it clear that he was at least vaguely aware that this person had this issue and employed him anyway. So I'm just saying, there are definitely, absolutely some things that need to be investigated and addressed in this Mr. Beast situation. And I'm kind of disappointed that this video didn't focus more on that stuff. But you know, I didn't watch it beforehand, so I was trying to make it an actual react video.
18 years old. The excuse of, oh, I didn't know, doesn't pass now, Jimmy. This is ridiculous. By the way, you know how Mr. Beast has this philanthropic project called Team Seas, where he clears oceans and seas and beaches of trash? Well, it turns out he left heaps of trash during the filming of a video near a body of water.
At the end of that video, he actually says,
and if you're wondering, yes, we did ensure the lake was completely cleaned up after this video.
DocPack ended up emailing the site in which Mr. Beast filmed, and they confirmed that he did indeed leave a lot of trash in this area.
Okay, look, I'm going to say something here that a lot of people are going to disagree with. I don't care where philanthropic stuff comes from. And I don't care if the people doing philanthropic stuff really care about whatever it is that they're doing. I don't care. Wells being dug in Africa, people being given their hearing or vision or whatever it was that he did, whatever the video was that he did where he was helping people with life-changing surgeries and things like that. I don't care why he did it. All I care is that it got done. People are being helped. People's lives are being changed. When he walks around and gives a random person money, I don't care whether he genuinely cares about that person or not. I care that the person is getting money. So again, I know I hate this video because it's making it sound like I'm defending Mr. Beast, because I don't even know the guy. I don't even really watch his content. But I also believe in principles and things that should be the thinking about things the right way according to my perspective. And if somebody wants to do philanthropic actions and they expect to have some kind of payback for that, as long as it's not coming from the person that they're trying to help, I don't have a problem with it. You know, he goes out and does these philanthropic things in order to generate revenue on YouTube. You know what? You know where my focus is? The people who needed water got water. The people who needed their hearing restored got hearing. Some person got some benefit out of whatever was happening, and nobody was hurt by it. So I don't care why they did it. You know, if he wants to make it seem like he's being generous, I don't care. As long as the people are getting helped, that's all that matters to me. So in this specific instance, I don't know enough about the thing, and they're always going to cherry pick information to make it come across the way they want it to come across. I don't know, but in general, the philanthropic things that I've heard about from Mr. Beast all sound like really awesome things that needed to get done, and he went out and did it. And if his motive for doing so was to make more money, so be it. I don't care. good things happened, and that's all that really matters as far as I'm concerned.
Interesting. The video ends with Jake crying, but this time thanking Doc Pack profusely for finally letting him talk about this. Something that he's been hiding inside of him for years. Not just out of fear of repercussion from Mr. Beast and his company, but also because he doesn't want his friends to lose their jobs.
Okay, and I understand that's a valid concern, and that a lot of people are going to have a hard time wanting to come, like, that's a standard thing. Victims have a hard time coming forward because they fear repercussions and things like that. I understand that. I totally do. I'm not trying to downplay that, you know, a lot of people have a hard time with that, and maybe he was afraid to come forward with this information because he knew Mr. Beast was powerful and could do bad things to him if he did. But at the same time, you know, again, you have the choice of coming forward or not coming forward. And if you can't find it within yourself, stand up and be heard and do all of those things, again, that's a choice that you're making, because you're making a risk assessment based off of what you want versus what you think the reality is, and you're choosing to play it safe. And if you choose to play it safe, people who don't play it safe are going to roll all over you. So again, like, this entire video, I wanted to watch this video and, you know, spend most of my time talking about how, you know, how evil turns into, like, power corrupts you into becoming more and more evil. But this focused on things that, when you compartmentalize them and remove them from the overall situation and just look at the things that are happening and the people involved, it's hard to have sympathy for what's going on, because they put themselves there. He put himself in every situation that I heard in this video. He put himself in those situations, whether it was working for this guy he didn't like, or going into this facility that smelled the way it smelled and choosing to stay there even though it was miserable, and feeling like he was tortured, and all he ever had to say was, "I'm done, I'm walking out now." And he chose not to do that because he was desperate for the money. I understand that there are psychological components in there that influence you to make certain decisions, but at the end of the day, the decision you make is the decision you make, not the decision that someone else makes for you. And while I feel sorry that this guy I do feel empathy for this guy, that he had to go through they didn't have to, that he went through these terrible things, and he's been permanently affected by the things that he went through. At the same time, I have a hard time being completely 100% empathetic towards him, because he chose to be there. Nobody yanked him off the street and kidnapped him and shoved him in a freaking thing and forced him to be there. He chose it. And he needs to take responsibility for that aspect of it, because, you know, even though a lot of this paints Mr. Beast as a big piece of crap, and he probably is, based off of all the body of knowledge that we have, you can't take things that don't actually apply to what's going on and try to make it apply. Mr. Beast can be an asshole and still not be committing crimes. See what I mean? Now, there's other things that I've heard about that are probably crimes, but this particular situation, I don't think qualifies. So anyways, let's finish up the video.
And other controversy anymore. People's lives are at stake here. The Beast games right now that are going on with Amazon already are threatening people's very existence. And Jake showed us that this isn't the first time Jimmy has done this. We need answers, and we need changes now, because this is unacceptable.
Now, this right here, this is a different story. If life-threatening conditions are present, we've already kind of established that those kinds of participations and things like that, even if the person agrees to them, are not legal. You'd have to get into law to talk about that. And I'm not a lawyer. I don't know anything about that particular thing, but I have a feeling that this would probably fall into that category of you can't participate in death games and things like that. So this right here is probably a different thing. But the vast majority of this video, this guy did it to himself. And while I do feel sorry for that he went through those things, at the same time, you chose it, dude. I'm sorry. I'm sorry. I don't want to be an asshole, but
it's 7 a.m.
he chose
right now.
it.
I'm about to upload this video. I'll see you in the next one. I think I need a vacation. I love you so.
All right, so yeah, I'll include the link to the video in here. Be sure to go check. Be sure to go over there and leave your likes and all that stuff to help out his channel. Be sure to like and subscribe to my channel to help out this channel. You know, I'm not on here to be a jerk. I'm really not. But at the same time, I'm not going to BS anybody either. And I just, you know, I'm sorry. I have a hard time empathizing with. I have a hard time. I can empathize with this guy, but I have a hard time having sympathy for him. I guess that's the word I need to really focus on. I can empathize with the fact that he went through some hard stuff, but it's hard to have sympathy for that because he chose to be there. And at the end of the day, if you can't find it within yourself to tell somebody to fuck off, then, you know, what happens to you happens to you. I'm sorry. So, yeah, not the type of video I typically make. I try to be a little bit more diplomatic about things, but in this particular case, I just can't. And so, anyways, I've rambled on enough about that. Hopefully you guys got something out of the video. Be sure to come back for the next one. Help out the channel by checking out some of the other content that we have, and I'll see you for the next one.